Hey everybody, this is Chuck Marone with Strong Towns. I want to talk to you a little bit today about reckless drivers, right? What is a reckless driver and who is a reckless driver? If you've seen any, well, let me start with this. I think all of us in our minds have an idea what a reckless driver is, right? What a reckless driver looks like. We've been out on the road somewhere, we've run into a reckless driver, right? Someone who's driving very aggressively, driving very fast, switching lanes aggressively. Someone who's out of control, right? You see these videos on YouTube that show aggressive driving. It's appalling, it's disgusting. These are the small number of deviants on the roadway that are not only not following the rules, but are acting in like a very aggressive, antisocial kind of way. And when we hear about aggressive driving or we hear about reckless driving, these are the kind of people that come into our minds. Oh yeah, that person was reckless, that person was driving reckless. And when that kind of person gets into a crash or gets into some type of, adverse outcome, adverse kind of situation, there's a little bit of kind of karma that comes with it, right? You were driving like a jerk, you were driving aggressively, and something bad happened to you. Of course it did, right? I want to give you some insight from actual crashes though, because if you read crash reports, if you read news reports about crashes, if you actually look at statistics, what you see is that the definition of reckless driver goes way, way, way beyond what you and I think of kind of colloquially, just as friends, what we think of as a reckless driver, right? If you speed, you are a reckless driver. Now, how many of us driving down the highway when the speed limit's 65 go 65? How many of us go the speed of traffic, which is like, here in Minnesota, 73, 74, roughly, right? There's a kind of common thing that everybody knows that you're not going to get a ticket if you drive 5 or 6 miles over the speed limit. So most people drive 5 or 6 miles over the speed limit. You're all reckless, right? Distracted driving is reckless driving. And so obviously if you're driving while texting, we can all say, well, that's reckless. But what about if you're driving while turning the radio station? What if you're driving while reading a billboard? What if you're driving while talking to someone in the next seat to you? These are things that we all commonly do. These things are, by like the strictest definition, reckless. The reason why this is important is because when there's a crash, the orientation of our system today is to assign blame. And not to assign blame to bad design, bad, like layout, like this is very dangerous. No, when there's a crash, when a car crashes into another car, or a car crashes into a person or a building or something, what is done is that there's an effort to assign blame. Part of this is about insurance. Who's going to pay for this mess, right? Who's going to pay the damages? And insurance companies really dominate what happens after crashes. But a lot of this has also ensnared like law enforcement agencies. You go out and you have a checklist, and that checklist is designed to help assess who's to blame for this crash. And the whole exercise is one of pointing fingers at what I'm going to call the victims of the crash, right? The people who are involved in it, whether you were the driver or the passenger or, whatever. Who are we going to assign blame to? Here's what's not part of this, and here's why this is a problem. First, when we just go about assigning blame, we're actually not looking at all the factors that cause a crash. There are a lot of times and a lot of places, and in fact, we've done 20 crash analysis studios where we've looked intensely at different crashes. And what we find is that there are always contributing factors. Yes, reckless driving sometimes is part of what causes a crash, but there are always, always, always additional factors, right? There are always things, typically design things, maintenance things, that contribute to the overall crash. These things are completely ignored in a system that just assigns blame. Here's the other reason why this is important. Crashes are somewhat random. We all know people who have gotten in crashes. Maybe you've gotten in a crash. I've gotten in a crash. I wrote about it at the end of Confessions of a Recovering Engineer. These crashes are random. You can do the same behavior every day for 1,000 days, and on day 1,001, get in a crash. Were you reckless and dangerous for those 1,000 days prior? Were you just unlucky on day 1,001? Well, statistically, you were just unlucky on day 1,001 because a lot of crashes are, in a sense, random occurrences. A lot of things happen all at once that don't typically happen. But here's the thing. When the system is designed to assign blame and that crash happens and you are the unlucky one involved in it, it's very, very likely that you are going to be found to be doing something reckless. In other words, we're all reckless drivers, and it's just a matter of a crash happening for you to get that label. This is a bad way to design streets. It's a bad way to respond to crashes. We should be responding to crashes by going out and analyzing what happened, learning from that, and making changes. That's what a Strong Towns approach is all about.